Welcome to Veterans Voices, a special edition of 12 News. I'm Walt Grayson. This morning we're paying tribute to the men and women who risked life and limb to serve this nation in the armed services. You've probably heard it said before that freedom is not free, and American service members put paid to the cost of our basic rights and liberties as citizens of a representative democracy. In times of war, that payment is made, as Winston Churchill once said, in blood, toil, sweat, and tears. We began the program with the bittersweet tale of a Mississippi warrior who finally came home. Corporal Quentin McCall's family finally got a long overdue homecoming recently. The Marine from Union Church, Mississippi, was killed in the Pacific on the tiny island called Tarawa and buried in a temporary cemetery nearby. Records of exactly where McCall was buried were misplaced. So it was 76 years later before he was found, and then 2 more years before he finally made it back home. This is the end of a long journey for Corporal Quentin McCall, the Mississippi Veteran Cemetery at Newton. His journey started at Union Church, Mississippi, where he was born and where he decided to enlist in the Marines in 1942 during World War II. He served on Guadalcanal and then the battle for the Tarawa Atoll. On the 3rd day of the 3-day battle, Corporal McCall was killed by a sniper. He was buried temporarily on Deschaux Island, and then there was a long delay from 1943 until 2019 before a mass grave of American servicemen was discovered on the island by History Flight. Identification of the body in Hawaii came next, and then the long journey back home to Mississippi.
I found him in September 2019. They came down here and gave us an orientation November of 2019, and then COVID hit us, and we're just now getting him home.
At the Jackson Airport in October of 2021, 78 years after he was killed, his flag-draped coffin arrived back home to awaiting family, friends of the family, and dignitaries. An honor guard was on hand to greet him, too. Quentin McCall, nephew and namesake of the soldier, says although he never met his Uncle Quentin, he feels like he knows him.
You know, I'm 72, and I've heard about it all my life, and it's a sad but a happy day, if that makes sense.
There is a camaraderie among soldiers who've served together, especially. One of the people on hand to greet Corporal McCall at the airport was a high school friend of Quint's. But more than that.
I was in the service with Quint, and of course he was named after the gentleman coming in today, and proud to be here.
The motorcade of area police officers and the Patriot Guard riders escorted Corporal McCall to Chancellor Funeral Home in Byron for a visitation. One of the few who remember Quentin was here, a younger first cousin. He was 12 years old when Quentin joined the Marines.
I remember he was the best fellow that ever lived.
It's a cloudy, somber day in Newton at the Mississippi Veteran Cemetery when Corporal McCall arrived. The Patriot Guard riders are here. Family, friends, the vast majority to give respect and honor to a man they never met. Eric Albertson is a member of History Flight. He was on Deschaux Island when Quentin McCall's body was discovered. He's traveled the entire journey with him. Now back home to Mississippi.
Well, it kind of brings, everything to a closure.
Homecoming. What every soldier looks forward to. That and having a safe homeland to come back home to.
And the main thing is, after 78 years, he's going to be buried in Mississippi dirt, coming home.
Quentin McCall is far from the only American fighter we should keep in our thoughts and prayers. There's an Army veteran online researcher who has made it his life's mission to do just that. Here's reporter Jeremy Hubbard to explain.
Army veteran Mark DeVille decided to Google himself at the urging of a coworker a few years back. He found a huge surprise.
And it came up a recipient of the Silver Star, and I said, well, that's not me. And he said, no, go ahead and read it. And so I read it, and I'm like, wow, that is me.
Turns out he had earned one of the highest honors for valor in combat and never even knew it.
That's why I do it. That's exactly why I do it.
Might never have known it if not for this man.
It feels very good.
Who's made it his life's work to make sure heroes get the recognition they deserve. Doug Sterner spends as much as 16 hours a day here at the computer in his Pueblo, Colorado home, compiling a massive database on a website called Home of Heroes. He's documented some 275,000 recipients of the nation's highest military honors.
We need those heroes to inspire us. Silver Stars.
For more than 2 decades, he's combed through thousands of files, folders, and documents, tracking down what he calls forgotten valor.
And I thought, well, it would be an impossible task. I said, it can't be done. But I'm an old Army combat engineer. Ask us to do something impossible, we will try.
It's personal for Sterner.
I wanted to recall the heroism of one of my friends. He was killed in action 2 months after I came home from Vietnam and was awarded a Silver Star. He was my closest friend. And I determined that he would never be forgotten.
But Sterner didn't want any military heroes forgotten. He knew millions of military records had been damaged or destroyed over the years, but he's rifled through the National Archives and other sources, has located duplicate records, and has carried out a Herculean task many assumed the military was already doing.
See, the military, when they present an award, they give a citation to the individual.
But in some cases, the Pentagon can't track down the recipients of those citations, and in some rare cases, the recipients don't want the award and don't want anyone to know.
When you get a medal for heroism, it's not something you want to talk about. That medal that you got represents the worst day of your life, and that's why they're lost to history.
No idea. No idea.
Lost to history is just how it seemed Mark DeVille's story would end.
It was describing our firefight in 1984.
Turns out he was involved in a 45-minute shootout at the DMZ 37 years ago as a Russian man attempted to defect across the border.
He crossed the line and he was chased by North Koreans.
DeVille and his unit saved that defector's life, an act of bravery that earned him the third highest award for valor.
It is pretty cool.
Which he only discovered when that Google search led him to Doug Sterner's website.
And he said they had been looking for me for a long time.
Believe it or not, his squad had been awarded the Silver Star 21 years ago, but none of them could track Mark down. But Doug's hard work connected all the dots.
And I told him I really didn't care. They could mail it to me, but my wife wants it presented.
And that's what happened. In a ceremony at the Pentagon, Mark finally got that Silver Star. Forgotten valor? Forgotten no more, thanks to this veteran who promises to remember. For Veterans Voices, I'm Jeremy Hubbard.
Sterner estimates there's still 150,000 names that need to be added to his database. So if you'd like to search his records for the name of a loved one that you have, we have links to this story right now on our webpage. Just search for Homes of Heroes at WJTV.com. Coming up on Veterans Voices, with Veterans Day in a couple of weeks, we want to clear up a few misconceptions about that federal holiday, and we'll pay tribute to those who gave their all in some of our 21st century conflicts. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back to Veterans Voices. Coming up on November 11th, a lot of people are going to have the day off from work that day. Most federal and state workers will get that day off, and many Americans will take time to honor our military veterans. Even so, there's some misconceptions about the holiday and what it's really all about. Here's Tavarius Haywood to clear up some confusion.
There's enough confusion about Veterans Day that the U.S. Department of Defense is highlighting 5 important facts about the holiday. The first thing to remember, there is no apostrophe in Veterans Day. The day honors all veterans, so no apostrophe is needed. Number 2, Veterans Day and Memorial Day are 2 different, distinct holidays celebrated in different ways. Memorial Day honors those who gave their lives for our country. Veterans Day honors everyone, dead or alive, who served and is largely extended to thank living vets for their sacrifice. Our third and fourth facts get into the history of the holiday. Veterans Day was originally called Armistice Day to commemorate the end of World War I. After World War II and the Korean War, Congress changed Armistice Day to Veterans Day, which is now celebrated on November 11th. And rounding out the top 5, Veterans Day is celebrated worldwide in different ways. For instance, Canada, Australia, and Great Britain have Remembrance Day in November honoring vets in similar fashion.
Veterans from across the country are traveling to the nation's capital once again after the COVID-19 pandemic grounded honor flights for 18 months. The nonprofit Honor Flight Network gives all expense-paid trips to those who served during the World War II, Korea, and Vietnam eras. And for many of those older vets, especially those who served back in the 40s and 50s, this may be their last opportunity to make that journey. It was another series of flights 20 years ago that plunged this nation into a bloody new war. The Pentagon was just one of the targets in al-Qaeda's jetliner attacks in Washington and New York. Home to the U.S. Department of Defense, the Pentagon itself was practically defenseless against a hijacked plane. But John Rogers recalls those service members who took action and willingly answered the call of duty.
When men and women swear the oath to defend our nation, they're prepared to face any danger this country may face, even if it comes right to their doorstep. On September 11, 2001, Daniel Fall was a second-class petty officer working for the Secretary of the Navy. His office was at the Pentagon, and at 9:37, the world stopped.
I heard a loud explosion. I stopped. My ears were ringing terribly. People were scrambling. Some were what looked like burned. Uniforms were tattered, soot marks.
Fall and thousands of others made their way to safety, but sadly, some of his friends didn't. They were killed in the terrorist attack. Undeterred, Fall and many others went right back to work the next day, while firefighters were still on the scene.
The building never stopped operating.
And the mission didn't end there. Fall and many others immediately answered the call to serve at Ground Zero. Fall spent 3 weeks in the shadow of the Trade Center's ruins, helping doctors and first responders.
What makes us great is that it's in those moments that we that are still here rise up, and what we like to say in the military, stand in the gap.
That dark day will forever stick with Fall, but he doesn't focus on the negative. He remembers it as a time when the military stood up to a challenge and succeeded. For Veterans Voices, I'm John Rogers.
Coming up on the program, even after the war, so many American veterans continue to find ways to help their neighbors. We're going to introduce you to a Marine who's found a new call at the YMCA. It's Veterans Voices, only on 12 News. Welcome back to Veterans Voices. I'm Walt Grayson. Tim Ney is a Marine Corps veteran who leads the Armed Services YMCA in San Diego. He doesn't have to do this. He served his country as a Marine. But as Misha DeBono reports, he's inspired to support military families much like his own.
San Diego's development owes much to the Navy, starting with the visit of the Great White Fleet of 16 battleships in 1908. Within a year, Pacific Fleet destroyers were based here.
We met up with retired Marine Sergeant Tim Nye at the newly installed Marine Memorial at Civita Park in San Diego's Mission Valley area.
Honor, courage, and commitment. We have so many great values that we live by in the United States Marine Corps, but also in our branches of service that we carry on as veterans as well. So it's just about doing the right thing.
No longer active duty since 2013, he's now the executive director of the Armed Services YMCA San Diego branch, where he continues to serve his brothers and sisters in uniform. It's no surprise he would choose a life of service.
My dad served 33 years in the United States Marine Corps. My family lineage goes back to Normandy, and I still have a son today who's in the United States Navy and a nephew who's also in the Navy. He
was Force Reconnaissance, one of the Marine Corps' most elite special ops, highly skilled and trained in all forms of tactical warfare. He is humble and hard-pressed to share what he actually did.
I was very, very fortunate to be First Force Reconnaissance Marine, which is considered, an elite force inside of the Marine Corps. However, every Marine's got their job, and every job is important.
Force Reconnaissance on the green side means intelligence behind enemy lines. And as you might imagine, black side or black ops means something different.
Hostage rescue, something of this nature, or much like the assault on, Osama bin Laden, going out and seeking that terrorist and taking him down.
Translation, this man is an American hero, one who has sacrificed and risked his life for our freedom. But that's not what he's most proud of.
What I'm most proud of actually is walking across the parade deck and having my dad standing on the other side saying, son, we're father and son, but now we're brothers.
Now he says he has his second favorite job, serving the unique challenges of military personnel and their families. Everything from family and youth enrichment, respite care, the Horse of the Sun Ranch, and the Warrior Care Initiative at the Naval Medical Center San Diego. And he knows the struggles firsthand.
There's a lot of shadows that our veterans, and every veteran, no matter where they serve, they all have their own story and their own personal struggles. It takes a lot to give up your freedoms and serve this country to ensure that we guard our legacy of freedom for America.
Coincidentally, we met on September 11th as our nation paused to remember.
We as a country really need to wrap our arms around our veterans and our military. I'm actually really proud as a veteran to see America and how much it embraces just days like today. Never enough we can do for our military members and their families. We like to say that the service member enlists, but the whole family serves.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Misha DeBono.
There's more to come on Veterans Voices. From fife and drum to tickling the ivories, music has often played a role in keeping battle lines in good order and putting pep in the step of our troops on the march. We'll hear from a musical veteran after a short break. Welcome back to Veterans Voices. You know, we've covered a lot of ground in this special report, but we don't have to travel too far for our next profile. We think of veterans who have served our country in roles like combat soldiers or technical support of a war, but there are other roles that veterans play, some with a musical twist. New Orleans journalist LBJ tells the story of one such veteran.
I started when I was very young. I would have to say before 4 or 5 years old.
At a young 87 years old, the man in the piano key suspenders is composer and music educator Roger Dickerson. Dickerson reflected on his early days of playing music in our city.
And there were musicians who lived in my neighborhood. We had a piano in the house. And so music was everywhere for me, is what I'm saying.
Dickerson is a multi-instrumentalist who played piano but also French horn and baritone horn, which led to an undergraduate music scholarship at Dillard and a master's degree from Indiana University. Upon graduation from IU, he was drafted into the U.S. Army, playing in the 44th Army Band, a job he took to heart.
You're serving your country, and we all were trying to do it the best that we could in what we did. We were musicians.
Dickerson and the Army Band spent significant time in Heidelberg, Germany, playing for everything from officers' events to marches. But upon his return home, Dickerson's work as an educator and composer took shape. Among his most famous students of composition is Terence Blanchard, who's composed music for dozens of films, but recalled the first time he was hired to score a movie.
You know what my first thought was? Call Roger Dickerson. I called Roger. I said, Roger, man, I have this project to do. What do I do? And you know what he told me? Trust your training. He said, trust your training. Now, to me, that shows you, A, the kind of confidence he had in me, too, but the kind of confidence he had in what he taught me.
Roger Dickerson's brilliance as a musician, teacher, and composer would be heard for generations in festivals, compositions, and endless projects. What's not lost on Dickerson is the service he gave to his country during his Army years.
I could see, very well a sense of, having made a contribution to something very important.
And lifelong friends from the 44th Army Band as well. For WGNO News, I'm LBJ.
Here's a little musical trivia from this veteran's voice. Roger organized a band in high school called Roger Dickerson and his Groovy Boys. And that band featured Ellis Marsalis on tenor saxophone. They remain lifelong friends. We'll have a final word after the break. Welcome back. With Veterans Day coming up on November 11th, we want to urge you to find ways to honor our nation's service members this month and in years to come. We never know when they'll be called upon again to protect their families, their neighbors, and their fellow Americans like us. I'm Walt Grayson, and for all of us here at 12 News, we say to our veterans, thank you and bless you.